I'm not real sorry about that, but let's see. Let's just, we're going to stay at what we're doing. We're not going to battle a train. Damn it. Let's see here. But anyway, about the tariffs and crap, that shit's not going to work, dudes. I can tell you that. From straight up honesty, that one, that won't happen. She stuck her foot in her mouth
one of them
with
said
that.
This: when your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls. They say it could lead to shortages, black markets, and hoarding. At worst, it might accidentally raise prices.
It would.
Here's economist E.J. Antoni on that.
Please explain to me how Ms. Harris's policies are not, in fact, aligned with the communist ideology when she's talking about trying to artificially set prices for, I don't care if it's food or rent, you name it. If you employ the same policies as we have had in these other communist countries around the world.
People has to understand inflation drove these prices up.
Senator, you know, it didn't end well. And economists
No, it didn't. Like I said, they did it back in the 70s. I remember it. And it didn't end well. There was a lot of people got voted out over it. Jimmy Carter being one of them.
Increase the production of housing. And yes, reductions in the prices that seniors pay for prescription drugs. I don't think there's anything communist about wanting housing more.
I know. Prescription drugs, I would agree with.
A lot of people feel like that is communist in nature. Housing aside, let's talk about price gouging and price controls.
Shannon, presidents of both parties have tried to use the power of the FTC to rein in high prices at the pump, high prices at grocery stores. I think picking this one proposal of the many she's put out misses the first point, which is that Vice President Harris is continuing the work of President Biden in reducing costs faced by working Americans. And as for an offset, President Trump wants to make permanent the nearly $5 trillion in tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans and the
Biden's using his tax cuts.
Party line vote in 2020.
Biden is using Trump's tax cuts. That is a fact.
Blocked a bill that came over from the House, the Republican-controlled House, that would have expanded the child tax credit and small business credits. We need to know why Republicans in the Senate want to block progress in reducing costs for small businesses and for families.
Well, the good news is both tickets seem to agree they want to expand the child tax credit. So maybe there is a rare point of agreement between these two. On the tax issue, because this comes up quite a bit, I want to point back to something in the Hill. They cite government data and say this: income data published by the IRS clearly show that on average, all income brackets benefited substantially from the Republicans' tax reform law.
They did.
The biggest beneficiaries being working and middle income filers, not the top 1%, as so many Democrats have argued. That's IRS data, Senator.
Yeah, and that's frankly just not true. That by
Bullshit.
cutting the corporate tax rate and by reducing taxes on the wealthiest Americans, the dollar benefits, they're talking percentages. In terms of the dollar benefits, it is the wealthiest Americans who benefited enormously. Here's the bigger point. It exploded our deficit.
Honestly, this ballhead motherfucker becomes senator.
Debt was greater under former President Trump than it has been under President Biden. And
Bullshit.
we need to find a path forward that pays for the tax incentives that we're talking about. I would vote, and I believe Vice President Harris would support, for allowing some of those 2017 tax cuts to sunset as a way to increase things like the child tax credit, incentives for the production of more affordable housing, and incentives for things like child care and a first child, which are a key piece of the Harris-Walz economic proposals that were rolled out this week.
Let's turn to foreign policy, because I want to make sure we hit on this as well. We haven't heard much from the vice president about this. It clearly, as commander-in-chief, would be a very full table for her should she come into it. Something she's part of the administration handling now. There's been a lot of attention to the fact that, when it comes
Well, you can't really, you ain't got much of an argument when it comes to Harris.
She has stood by that decision. I want to play something she said when asked about it in 2021.
President, Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision. Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do. So she stands by that. You know, of course, we lost tragically 13 young American service members. Many were injured. We left tens of thousands of people behind that we told we were going to get out of that country. Why should American voters trust her as commander-in-chief if she stands by that foreign policy decision?
Well, two things. We have worked hard on a bipartisan basis to provide support for those who served in Afghanistan alongside us and to continue to get them out of the country. Tens of thousands have come to the United States over the past 2 years, and I think we need to continue to work to make sure that Afghans who come to the United States get the support that they deserve for the fight they were involved in alongside our brave troops for so many years. Second, I was with Vice President Harris at the Munich Security Conference earlier this year and the previous year, where she gave strong, clear-eyed, and forceful speeches about the importance of NATO, the importance of fighting for democracy, something that J.D. Vance does not agree with, that we need to continue to push back on Putin's aggression in Russia and to strengthen our alliances around the world. The time NATO deployed in defense of another NATO nation was to Afghanistan on behalf of the United States. That's the only time Article 5 was invoked and NATO troops deployed was after 9/11. And I think the way that we do our best for the memory of those Americans and those NATO troops who served and made the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan was to continue to strengthen the NATO alliance, as President Biden has and as Vice President Harris will, and to not abandon our partnerships and our alliances with democracies, as former President Trump has threatened to do. Look, Shannon, if you ask the former president's Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, and Chief of Staff, a decorated Marine veteran himself, they are all not voting for Donald Trump. There's a reason for that. They don't think he should be anywhere near the Oval Office again. And I'd encourage you to ask J.D. Vance about what Donald Trump said just this week about the Congressional Medal of Honor, something that was denounced by the VFW.
I have a lot of questions for the senator coming up, but this is the visual we got this week. 3 years out from Bagram Air Base, we've got the Taliban parading with our equipment, with our base that we left behind. That's a tough visual and one that people feel like this administration wholly owns, and that includes the vice president. Senator, we'll get to all kinds of questions with Senator Vance, maybe some of yours. It's always good to see you, and we'll see you here in Chicago.
Thank you, Shannon.
It doesn't look too good.
I did so many. I could stand up here all day and tell you different stories.
And we're back in third quarter planning. Adams is quarterbacking this project, and
I just used the telephone. I could stop the war with a telephone. I could stop what's happening in the Middle East with...
Every day in the mainstream media, there's a headline that goes, Republicans pounce, Republicans seize, or they might switch it up and say, Republicans accuse. And invariably, the thing Republicans are pouncing or seizing on is something that the Dems are actually doing. Case in point, the New York Times has a glowing piece this week titled, Immigrants are becoming U.S. citizens at fastest clip in years. The lead adding, new citizens say they're looking forward to voting in November. You don't say. The whole piece brags about how many new immigrants they're pumping through the system and how many of them are going to vote. That's in addition to all the illegals they're letting in every single day, of course. That's how Democratic-controlled states have gained congressional seats. As president, Trump tried to end this by forcing the census to ban all non-citizens from apportionment. But one of Biden's first acts was to reverse this policy while opening the border to millions of illegals. The goal to increase how many electoral votes states have in elections, because those votes are based on the number of residents as determined by the census. So by including illegals, a state can gain extra votes in Congress. So it's no wonder the same libs who freak out over gentrification want wide open borders. God forbid an urban neighborhood gets a Whole Foods, but MS-13 sets up shop on the corner. That's just more votes. But back to the Times piece, where one expert notes, the surge in naturalization efficiency is potentially reshaping the electorate months before a pivotal election. Every citizenship application could be a vote that decides Senate seats or even the presidency. For the Dems, of course. since new citizens overwhelmingly tend to be Democrat instead of Republican. And I get it. Why not vote for the people who keep promising you free stuff? And after another election or two, when these new citizens realize that Democrats suck, there's already a new wave of naive voters coming in. The Dems can't win if everybody knows better. So they got to keep pumping in new rubes to exploit. They're playing chess. Republicans are playing with themselves. But when we shout "see" as the Dems do the thing they're outright bragging about, they call you a bigot for noticing this.
Hardly imagine most Hollywood stars or even royals as Olympic athletes.
We're done.
What about these?
Looks right.
In fact,
bring in former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury under Biden, Ben Harris, and the CEO and Chief Global Strategist of Euro-Pacific Capital, Inc., Peter Schiff. Good to see you both, fellas. Ben, I start with you. What do you make of my assessment, and why do you believe that Harris is better than Trump when it comes to restoring the...
So I think you gave a very fair assessment.
I'll call bullshit on that. I mean, really. That's a good one.
Former NBC football reporter Michelle Tafoya had some words for a fellow talking head. Tafoya called out ESPN analyst Mina Kimes for her praising of Democratic vice presidential candidate masculinity. "I am sincerely embarrassed for it," Mina Kimes, Tafoya wrote on X, "and how pathetic that her kind of masculinity means more than the candidate's record, which is abysmal. Sincerely, a Minnesotan." Click here for more sports coverage on foxnews.com. Kimes said it was really important to see a different kind of masculinity, although she never officially endorsed Walz. "We're kind of seeing it in the NFL with the Kelceys and Dan Campbell, this idea that big, tough football guy isn't separate from showing emotion and empathy," Kimes said on Pablo Torre's podcast. "Yes, they're calling him coach and whatnot, but in the same breath, they are emphasizing this man, the year he was a football coach, also ran the Gay Straight Alliance at the high school. That's really powerful in a way that goes far beyond politics and electability, which is the disgusting thing. There are very few models like that in American public life." Read on the Fox News app. Kimes responded to Tafoya's post with what's become a meme of LeBron James pretending to be scared. Super Bowl champ Fletcher Cox reflects on retirement life.
Damn, bro, they
grumpy about Brazil game. ESPN
95
recently
players.
fired
Damn,
Saint
we might not
It's
get a
been
play no
widely speculated it was
operations.
because of her political beliefs, as she had spoken out about transgender participation in women's and girls' sports. ESPN cited budget cuts and also fired Robert Griffin III. Dan Orlovsky, an analyst for the network, also deleted a post that read, "Protect our daughters," during the boxing controversy at the Olympics. Tafoya left NBC shortly after Super Bowl 56. Right after leaving, she became the co-chair for Republican Minnesota gubernatorial candidate Kendall Qualls when he ran against Walz. Follow Fox News Digital's sports coverage on X and subscribe to the Fox News Sports Huddle newsletter. Original article source, Michelle Tafoya, sincerely embarrassed for ESPN host for praising Tim Walz's masculinity.
Damn. I mean, I don't know about it. In all honesty, it's just a bunch of shit. In all honesty, I don't even know why I even listen to MSNBC News. It's bullshit. It's never right, and it's always inaccurate, and it's full of fake shit. There's a Dalton mayor again. I tell you now, that's one that's really messed up right here. Is this right here. Listen to this crap, bros, about the Dalton mayor. This is some shit. Listen to her.
Go into the detail. Louis Lacey is a scammer, and
this is Hannibal is hungry, as who this is
of that settlement that
going in on this.
To avoid pain by going on another bankruptcy. We're going to get into the details of that case because it really shows that Lacey is a scammer and a predator, taking advantage of a widow, taking advantage of someone who recently had their significant other die. We're going to talk about that and more. Let's get into it.
Okay.
First, let's check out the latest with Lacey.
The deputy police chief facing a new lawsuit involving tens of thousands of dollars in overtime pay.
This lawsuit alleges that Dalton's acting police chief paid himself more than $100,000 in OT that he was not supposed to receive. Louis Lacey is being sued by the village for overtime. They say he paid himself but was never eligible to receive. The lawsuit alleges between August of last year and July of this year, Lacey submitted and approved nearly $140,000 in overtime for himself, even though he's a salaried employee, not entitled to OT.
The Dalton Police Department planned to present a unified vote of no confidence in the deputy police chief to the village board. In a letter shared with ABC7, members of the Dalton PD say they're issuing a formal declaration expressing their displeasure with Lacey's leadership.
The situation with Chief Louis Lacey is just ridiculously crazy. Nothing short of a disgrace. Not only did he betray a grieving widow that we're going to be talking about later on in this video, but he continued to exploit his position of power in other ways. So you see, most recently, Lacey is facing a new lawsuit for allegedly paying himself over $100,000 in overtime as a salary employee. Lacey wanted to do whatever he wanted to do. This behavior is not just unethical, it's criminal. Lacey has shown time and time again lining up his own pockets than serving the community that he's supposed to be protecting. And let's not forget his close ties to Mayor Tiffany Hayden, who needs him to be happy so he doesn't flip on her when the feds come on asking. Because
he's going to flip. The way I took it, he done has.
He's in a lot of trouble. And as I say time and time again, it is clear Lacey should never ever hold a position of power again. His actions are a blatant abuse of trust and authority. He's not just a bad cop, he's a criminal who should face the full consequences of his actions. When it comes to this situation, the people in Dalton deserve better, and it's starting to happen because a lot of these so-called leaders are being held accountable. But speaking of scandals, let's dive deeper into this fraud charges against Lacey that happened a couple of years ago. A case that highlights the extent of his deceit and the serious consequences it should have on his career and freedom. Let's get into it. So see right here, this was a civil action cover sheet. I think she wrote a brief story on what exactly happened. Her name is Denise White Hampton versus Louis Lacey. And you can see right here is based on not just fraud, but consumer fraud. So she explains exactly what happened and bring out more details of this situation. And probably is one of the reasons why he had a vote of no confidence from his fellow police officers. This was filled out June 22nd, 2015. The amount claimed $100,000 consumer fraud. So we're going to read this story. Louis Lacey came to my house June 8th, 2013. My husband was murdered at 2012 at our home. I have been with my husband for 25 years. I have 3 kids. I got married when I was 34 years old. I was grieving and very vulnerable at the time. Mr. Louis Lacey told me that I'm going to protect you. I am going to be your friend. He started dating me. Louis Lacey started telling me about his financial problems, and he started asking for money. Mr. Louis Lacey asked me, did your husband have a good insurance? I said, yes, he did. Louis Lacey said, that's good for you. And Mr. Lacey asked me, how much insurance money do I have? I told Mr. Lacey how much money I had in the bank. I told him $300,000. And Mr. Lacey started asking me for money. August 10, 2013, I started drawing money out of the bank. I didn't know that he preyed on my insurance money. I loaned Mr. Lacey money every week. Looks like every day, $10,000 every week. He told me that he was going to give me my money back when he get his settlement. And then you have the signature there of Denise White Hampton. So as you guys can see right here, on June 8, 2013, Denise White Hampton's husband, Derek Hampton, was fatally shot in the driveway of her home. As a sworn police officer, Lacey responded to the scene, being there to provide assistance and comfort to the grieving widow. However, as the documents reveal, Lacey's actions following this tragedy were anything but noble. Instead of offering general support, Lacey began visiting White Hampton frequently under the guise of checking on her safety. And then during these visits, he expressed his romantic interest in her. He falsely claimed that he was unmarried and he was falling in love with her. Lacey's revelation of Denise White Hampton during a time of immense vulnerability is disgusting, revealing what kind of person Louis Lacey is.
Oh, that's not good there, bro.
Of public trust. You see right here, he was falling in love with the plaintiff and falsely represented that he was unmarried. He is married. He told
oh, that's not good. We're going to sink, bro.
Seriously in debt and requested a cash loan. And he just lied, falsely represented that he had a lawsuit pending and would provide substantial funds for repayment of the loan, and said repayment will be forthcoming upon receipt of this settlement. And the plaintiff, Denise White Hampton, believed and relied upon the defendant, Louis Lacey's representation, set was induced to lend to on or about the following dates.
I don't know if we did or not. I heard one.
That's the amount of money that she was giving him during this time. It's a lot of money.
It was
a crazy amount of money.
an animal, dudes.
Louis Lacey was scamming out of that.
I guess it was.
Scamming actions did not stop at emotional manipulation. So by August 2013, Lacey had convinced White Hampton that he was in serious debt and needed financial assistance. So over the next couple of months, Lacey continued to deceive White Hampton, fabricating a story about some kind of pending lawsuit that will allow him to repay her. And if you calculate all this, in total, White Hampton lent Lacey $88,800, believing that he would honor his word and return the money once his so-called settlement came through. The series of loans, meticulously documented in this right here, demonstrates the extent of which Lacey exploited White Hampton's trust for his financial gain. This was a gross abuse of power and a violation of ethical standards while exploiting this grieving widow. Plaintiff Denise White Hampton has made demand for repayment of said loans, but defendant Louis Lacey refused to make payment. What a guy! What a great guy! Eventually, Denise White Hampton realized that this guy was a scammer. So the truth about Lacey's deceit came to light when she realized, you know what? I'm being tricked here. I'm being duped. Lacey's failure to repay the loans and his continued lies led White Hampton to file the lawsuit against him in 2015 to recover the funds. This legal action exposed Lacey's fraudulent behavior and set the stage for criminal charges that would follow. And you see right there the $88,800. And this is the amount of money that Lacey had to pay back. And then he decides to file for bankruptcy, to where we are right now. Lacey was indicted on federal charges of bankruptcy, fraud, and perjury, further compounding his legal troubles. The indictment accuses Lacey of concealing assets and income during bankruptcy proceedings to avoid repaying his debts, including the money was owed to White Hampton. This deliberate attempt to deceive the court and evade financial responsibility is indicative of a man who has no respect for law or the principles of justice. This is a man that should never be a judge. His conduct not only violates legal and ethical standards expected by law enforcement officials, but also undermines just the entire criminal justice system. Police officers are supposed to be the embodiment of integrity and fairness.
But anyway, that's about what they've been going through there with that guy. They fired him, and he's showed up numerous times.
In a minute, I'm going to feed and clean the cats.
Oh, okay. Okay.
When I told Trump about this, he urged me to get this message out to.
Taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
tips, and all of a sudden she's making a speech and saying there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. And by the way, they had just the opposite. You know, they had not only tax on tips, but they hired 88,000 IRS agents, and many of them were assigned to go get waitresses and caddies and all of this.
And that was former President Trump speaking to Elon Musk last night on X, slamming Vice President Kamala Harris for copying his no tax on tips plan. The White House now claims that President Biden supports this idea. Watch.
So why then have the president and vice president not talked about this over the past 3.5 years?
The president supports eliminating taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers. And at the same time, what this president and this vice president has been able to do is help raising minimum wage. This is part of the vice president's policy. This is something that we want to see happen.
Just last month, the Biden-Harris administration was actively telling people how to pay their taxes on all of their tips, releasing this IRS guidance that includes a, quote, interactive tax assistant, which checks to see if people's tips are taxable. Joining me now is Texas Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne, who recently hosted a massive jobs fair in Arlington, which featured 500 business and more than 30,000 job seekers. Congresswoman, thanks very much. Before we get to your jobs fair, what do you make of this fight over tax on tips? I remember when the Inflation Reduction Act was just passing, there was, what, $80 billion in there to go to the IRS so that the IRS could hire all these agents to, in fact, find all the tips that were not being taxed. So they're doing a total 180 here.
The IRS, the Biden-Harris IRS actually came out and publicly stated that those agents would be used. Some of those agents would be used to focus on making sure that people pay taxes on their tips. And now they're doing a complete 180. But look, I mean, they have been dragging around a corpse for the last 3 years. So the base is now excited because Kamala is in, and they've got somebody who they can follow and who's actually, out and about. She still hasn't done an interview with the media, with the press, but let's put that aside. The fact is that they have an arsonist policies. She was the head arsonist. She was the deciding vote in the inflation, in the dishonest Inflation Reduction Act, which led to some of the highest inflation that we've ever seen. Working families are now having to pay on average $11,000 more per year just to get the same basics. She was at the head of that, and now they're trying to completely flip it. This is not her first day, right? Keep saying what she's going to do on her first day. She's over 1,000 days into her job. When are you going to start actually worrying about the American taxpayer? Don't tell us what you're going to do. Do it now.
Well, that's not the only flip. I mean, she's flip-flopping all over the place. She's certainly doing a flip-flop on the border as well while she was rallying in Arizona. Harris called for, quote, strong border security. But while campaigning for president back in October of 2019, she vowed to close immigration detention centers on day one of her presidency. Meanwhile, a California border sheriff says that he was shown in one of Kamala Harris's campaign ads that highlighted the need for border security without his permission. The sheriff says that he does not support Harris for president, and he's accusing the campaign of including misleading information in the ad, telling Fox News Digital, quote, the truth is Harris never cared about the cartels and did nothing to stop people from illegally crossing the border. Immigration and Customs and Enforcement made 50 criminal arrests across the country in just one day last month. Officials arrested 3 men from Honduras and Texas, 2 of them previously convicted of sex crimes on children. The third had been convicted of murder. Congresswoman, I mean, look, do you think she's just sort of speaking to the crowd in Arizona, talking about the border in Arizona, or do you think she's actually gotten religion on the border? She was supposed to be the border czar under Biden, and she didn't even go to the border. They kept saying the border was secure when it wasn't. We all know that. We've all been to the border. And many others. 60
days into the Biden-Harris administration, Biden basically placed her in charge of protecting our borders and to prevent the number of people coming through. 3.5 years later, we've seen nearly 15 million people come through under their policies. She has completely ignored that responsibility. She went down to El Paso and saw a sanitized version of that city, did not bother going down to the border, has not bothered working with our Customs and Border Patrol folks. If she was concerned at all, she knows the policies that worked. They were already on the table when they came into office. They worked under President Trump. We had some of the lowest rates ever of people illegally crossing into our country. But instead of following those policies, keeping those policies, they took them away. And now what you're seeing with Walt. with Walz is they're doubling down. I mean, they are both incentivizing. She's talked about how she wants to get rid of private health care, and she wants to give taxpayer-funded health care to all illegal immigrants coming in. They want to open the borders. They're fine. They have handed over control of our border to Mexican cartels, drug and sex traffickers. This is what they're doing in there, and we have no reason to believe that she's changed her mind, except that the polls show that they're losing on that issue, and so she's simply changing for political expediency.
I know, but I wonder why. I mean, why would anyone who is the steward of our great nation, our great country, allow an open border where you've got all these illegals coming in and we don't even know half of their intentions? I mean, the GOP House Freedom Caucus is now demanding that the next government funding bill include the SAVE Act. Okay? The Senate won't even bring it to the floor for a debate. It prevents non-citizens from voting in federal elections, as you know. The Harris campaign requiring all people to present an ID to attend her rally in Arizona over the weekend. So you need ID to go see Harris speak, despite the fact that Harris previously called Republican voter ID laws racist. And in 2021, she claimed that people in rural states can't prove their identity because they don't have access to copy machines. Watch this.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support?
I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean.
I ordered a 3-month survival kit, and here's why it came in the most boring packaging ever.
Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't. There's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them.
I mean, I can't even believe she got away with that answer, Congresswoman. She actually got away with that answer, saying that you don't need a voter ID because you might have not access to a Kinko's.
Yeah, so you need to actually get out to the rural folks and find out how they feel about it, because they'll tell you they're offended by that statement as well. I mean, look, you have an ability to be able to vote. All we were asking about is that if you were illegally here, you don't. But why? You ask the question, why do they want people who are here illegally? They're counting them in the census to make up for people who have left, they voted with their feet and left places like California and New York. They're trying to repopulate those areas to make sure that they can continue to keep those congressional districts. Yvette Clarke out of New York, the Democrat representative has already said that. This is their own statements. They're giving them away. It's terrible.
We got to jump real quick on your jobs fair. We just got weak numbers and a weak forecast from Home Depot showing a real weakness for the consumer. What did you see in the jobs fair, real quick?
Look, we had almost 25 to 30,000 people who came out, and you're seeing, working families, young families, who are struggling right now. They were the people that were represented. But the thing that surprised me the most was the number of senior citizens that came. Number of senior citizens that they had retired, and they were actually shocked that they're having to now go back into the workforce to make ends meet. So it's not just younger that are affected by this, but it's also seniors.
You're right. That is troubling, actually. In your golden years, you think you're going to relax and have some time off, and yet you've got to get another job because you need the money. Congressman, thank you. Congresswoman Van Dyne joining us.
But first, when Donald Trump called the media the enemy of the people, I never imagined the bulk of the mainstream media would work tirelessly to live up to that tag. But here we are, and from the Fine People hoax, to the Russian collusion hoax, to the Kamala is a great and visionary leader delusion, the gaslighting and deliberate disinfo has been turned up to thermonuclear levels. Large sections of the media are so shameless that they even took a poignant moment from the Republican National Convention when Trump paid tribute to Corey Compatore, the father and fireman who was murdered at a Trump rally by the assassin who was trying to kill President Trump. Here is Corey's widow this week talking about what that moment meant to the family.
Corey's firefighter gear was displayed at the Republican National Convention, which was a special honor.
That was an honor. That was a big honor. All day at the rally, my husband kept saying,
he's going to call me up on stage. You're going to hear him. He's going to say, Corey, come on up here. Corey, get up here. He was just joking, you know, obviously, but he kept saying that. You're going to get up. You know, he's going to call me up on stage. And we were all like, there's his moment. He's up on stage.
It was a powerful, emotional moment, but this is how the media spoke of the tribute. Let's start with MSNBC.
I was sickened by the prop that was Mr. Comparator.
Exactly. Comparator, yeah.
Comparator. I was sickened by using him as a prop, his firefighter jacket, and then they spelled the man's name wrong. And so he said, oh, we're so grateful that the fire department sent this to us. These are local dang on dollars, okay? This is not, you know, Chicago Fire. Angela Bassett about to come on. They got their names on the back of the jacket. It's like, who are you for? But then they put the name on it and they spelled it wrong. I was just kind of like, if we're gonna do props, like, let's at least get it right.
I'm trying to organize that chaos in my mind.
Just gross. The truth is, it wasn't a prop. It was a real uniform. The media who ran with that angle would have known that if they did even 5 seconds of research, because Corey's former colleagues had displayed his uniform as a tribute well before the Republican National Convention. We'd already seen this image. Those with any interest in the assassination attempt and its victims knew that. Any media reporting on it could have within seconds, but no. In their desperation to slam Trump, they manufactured a story giving little thought to how it would impact a grieving family. And that fake news about the Trump camp misspelling Corey's name went far and wide. And it was also evident right here in Australia. They were eager to push that fake news from the free-to-air stations to the 9 papers. Here's how The Age reported Trump's speech at the Republican National Convention. They claimed that the tribute to the killed firefighter misspells name. They put that in the headline. That was their focus. And here is the Sydney Morning Herald and their headline. Our friend Corey, Trump tribute to killed firefighter misspells name. Just shameful fake news. The eagerness to damage Trump seems to be the highest priority above facts, reason, and any sense of decency. A man was murdered in front of his wife and daughter. Even if the uniform wasn't real and someone had made a mistake.
Let's have a moment of silence for that man. Brings tears to my eyes to even think about him, that he was shot knowing for nothing. He took his family to a political event. He ended up murdered. Sad. Very sad. I hope God's watching over him in heaven.
Is that really something to highlight in the headline? But what can you expect from a media that went from calling Kamala Harris inept, unlikable and a political liability to pretty much overnight declaring her a visionary, capable leader? Remember how they used to talk about Kamala when they were trying to convince us all that Joe Biden was a wonderful president who had no cognitive decline? Watch the leftist media seek to blame the VP for the Biden administration's many woes.
There are reports that say that you have the lowest approval rating of any vice president. Well, there are polls that also say I have great approval ratings.
Bullshit.
Swing voters don't like Harris. How big a drag is Kamala Harris
on the ticket. She's a pretty big jag. I think she was arguably Biden's worst political decision.
They don't like her. There's lots of reasons they don't like her.
Kamala Harris's approval rating is now at 28%, which is an historic low for any modern vice president.
We're hearing it from mainstream media.
Besides Tim the Damn Home.
One leak after another. The Kamala Harris is the worst vice president ever, the worst politician ever.
Yep, that's how they used to talk about her. That was all left-wing media, by the way, in the days when they were boosting Joe Biden. That was the #1 priority back then. But they would be honest about Kamala. They'd tell us things like this.
We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
The point that Lester Holt was making was obvious to anyone else who was watching this interview, which is that the issues at the border are inextricably linked with the portfolio that she's been given.
He picked Kamala Harris to be his running mate. She was ranked and is ranked as the most liberal senator in the United States Senate. So he could have gone the other way, but he went to the left.
And now we're told she is a moderate,
I believe,
successful, and she's picked as her running mate another moderate, not some mad.
And in all honesty, I think that she was his fuck you on the way out. He nominated her simply because to tell him fuck you on the way out, where they made him give up his run. And I do truly believe that. Truly, do I believe that. What? Ramaswamy.
The Biden administration finally agreed to ban Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance from receiving any more funding for gain-of-function research.
Businessman and author of Truths, The Future of America First. Vivek, as always, welcome back. Just want to get your take on this big media event with the and also Trump's return to X, which some people have been advocating. All right, he's on. He's got 89 million some odd followers. A whole lot of people listened to the interview last night. I know there were technical issues, but they seem to have gotten straightened out. Vivek, all this internet, social media, substantive stuff is right up your alley. What do you think about it?
I think it's great. I think it's a great chance for Americans to see Donald Trump in long form. That's what we should want of our presidential candidates. And Larry, I think it is pathetic that Kamala Harris has not sat down for one serious interview, long form or short form, with the media of any kind. I think it was smart of Elon, and he was correct in extending that same invitation to Kamala Harris. I doubt she'll take him up on it. But if she does, I'll give her credit for that, too, because that makes the country stronger. One of the things that was most remarkable to me about it, Larry, though, was how threatened certain people were by the existence of that interview. Kamala Harris's team was criticizing things Donald Trump said, even as she refuses to sit for those same interviews. And look at the EU's censorship demands ahead of that interview to Elon Musk. That is, I think, arresting. When you think about the United States of America having foreign countries worried about an open conversation with a U.S. president in the United States of America, that should be sending alarm bells, and I think that dimension was not discussed enough, if you ask me.
Actually, we'll put it into the RIF. It's a great point. We'll put it into the RIF of the EU, which has some nerve. Was there hacking at the beginning of this thing? I don't know what the story was, and even if I knew, I probably wouldn't understand it, Vivek. What do you think?
Look, hacking or some type of attack or cyber attack that stopped people from joining, that's what Elon signaled via his tweet. I don't think the technical details matter for what happened at the start of that. That would be like the equivalent of if our interview glitched and we spent 10 minutes talking about it. It's a boring subject. What I care much more about is the content of what was discussed. And if we focus this election on sealing the border, growing the economy, staying out of World War III, and reviving national pride, that's what I heard in that conversation yesterday. I think we win this thing.
I'm good.
The more we focus on policy and our vision for the future, the more successful we're going to be.
I love that.
Focus on that, the less successful we're going to be. That's the bottom line on this election. And just on that point of foreign interference, when I think about this yesterday, Larry, that sent chills down my spine ahead of this interview or this discussion that Elon Musk had with Donald Trump. If that was Russia telling a mainstream media news outlet that ahead of them talking to Kamala Harris, they had to abide by the EU's perspectives on that discussion. Imagine what the reaction in this country would be. You know what? Our reaction shouldn't be any different when the same shoe fits the other foot. And so
I didn't like the EU doing
that
it.
happened yesterday that escaped notice.
I roughed out some of the topics. You know, it's a very long interview. I think it was over an hour and so forth. Actually, it might have been closer to 2 hours. But from your own, I don't know what you heard of it from the riff tonight. Does it sound like Mr. Trump is now moved back on message? That's the key. You know, I had Kellyanne Conway on the show last night. We were going back and forth. We are very dear friends, she and I, and we both agreed, let's have insights, not insults. And it just seems like the speech in Montana by Mr. Trump over the weekend and this interview with Mr. Elon Musk sounds like he's really kind of back on important messaging. Do you think that's correct?
Well, look, I talk to President Trump pretty frequently, and one of the things I love about him is he is always himself. He's authentic. Voters are hungry for that. They don't want a candidate who is managed by the advisor class around them. That's what you get with Joe Biden. That's what you get with Kamala Harris.
This is a good one. Yeah, listen to this one,
They
bro.
thought surgery was the only...
Yeah, you'll really like this one. It's,
There's a balance, and as a woman, there's a balance to be struck between being tough and being a bitch.
I'm gonna be showered.
Yeah, okay.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
What's wrong with you people?
Alrighty, y'all, let's get one thing straight from the get-go. Myself and 99.9% of society could care less about where Kamala's melanin content originated from. India, Jamaica, don't matter. We're all part of the one human race created by God Almighty and believe the same color red. It takes all kinds, and we don't need any more identity politics dividing us. What we do need to recognize, though, if you haven't already, is that we're in a battle of good versus evil. Everyone should care about someone consistently telling lies to pander to specific demographics for votes, especially when that person is trying to be the next leader of the free world. I don't know about you, but it makes us common sense individuals wonder, if this person refuses to be authentic during a scripted speech, goodness gracious, what else is Heels Up Harris being deceitful about that we need to investigate? And that leads me to my main point, and it's a question that only you can answer for yourself. Can you name one thing Kamala has accomplished as vice president? One single policy decision that's enhanced the quality of your life? How's your financial situation?
Here we go. Look at them go down. What some would call history in the making.
Scary. Don't say that.
We have never been down 1,000 points ever, not even intraday on the NASDAQ.
Bidenomics is working. It's working.
The stock market just taking a big old nosedive this morning. Dow Jones.
I'll be right back, boys. I'll turn my AC on.
Do you feel confident about your safety in this nation? From the southern border to our Second Amendment rights to defend ourselves, do you feel better over the past 4 years compared to Trump's administration? Who pops off at the mouth with empty promises and who truly delivers for Americans? Think about that as you watch this meltdown from ABC's George Stephanopoulos. Byron Donalds just wanted to get into the nitty-gritty, meaningful issues, but instead, little George insisted on doing the typical lefty race bait. He even went as far as calling it a slur if you simply have conversations questioning the legitimacy about Kamala's racial claims. This was insane.
Byron Donalds, Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. Why is former President Trump questioning the Vice President's racial identity?
Well, first, George, in Chicago, he was responding to a question from, I believe, Rachel Scott. Like, this is really a phony controversy. I don't really care. Most people don't. But if we're going to be accurate, when Kamala Harris went into the United States Senate, it was AP that said she was the first Indian-American United States Senator. It was actually played up a lot when she came into the Senate. Now she's running nationally. Obviously, the campaign has shifted. They're talking much more about her father's heritage and her black identity. It doesn't really matter. The president mentioned it. What he also talks about
There's no snop-a-lop sure go off.
Harris is the person who created this massive inflation, which is destroying black families, white families, Hispanic families. It's her failure as borders are that has left our southern border wide open, more than 10 million illegal immigrants coming into our country, record fentanyl coming into our country, which has killed more Americans than at any other point in the history of our country with respect specifically to fentanyl. And the fact that she and Joe Biden have unleashed one of the worst foreign policies in the history of our country that has us on the verge of World War III. That is Kamala Harris's record. President Trump talks about that frequently, but yes, he did mention it in Chicago in response to a question from Rachel Scott.
And you just repeated the slur again. If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There were a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue...
Sir, 1 second. You just did it. You just did it again.
Of the United States.
Why do you insist on questioning her racial identity?
You want me to talk?
I want you to answer my question.
George, now that you're done yelling at me, let me answer. He talked about it on the stage yesterday in Atlanta for, 2 minutes? He spent more than 35, 40 minutes going after her record, talking about how radical of a senator that she was. She was the most liberal senator in the United States, in the United States Senate. That is a fact. He talked about the job that she did as vice president of the United States, a job, I will add.
Okay, we'll have to go back and get her spotted.
You guys like to glom on to this that he talks about
to get to the last one.
Or in a serious manner for about a minute or so, but what you do not cover is the litany of failures of Kamala Harris. That's what you're not covering, George.
So questioning somebody's racial identity for a couple minutes is okay?
George, I'm going to tell you again, he brought it up. AP is the one that wrote the headline when she first came in to the United States Senate. Didn't talk about her being black, talked about her being the first Indian American senator. AP brought that up. I mean, George, we could have this conversation for the entire segment, but none of this matters to the American people. What matters to the American people is, are we going to have the same policies of the Biden-Harris administration that has been destructive of the American people, or are we going to have the policies of the Trump administration, which put America first, had low inflation, prosperous Americans, no matter your race, no matter your color, no matter your creed, and a foreign policy that kept America safe? Those are the facts that truly matter, because this issue is going to come and go. The lives of the American people is what's going to remain, and that's what matters more than anything else.
If it doesn't matter, I don't understand why you keep on repeating it, why the president keeps on repeating it, why those introducing the president yesterday
George,
keep on
actually,
repeating
I'm not the one who keeps repeating it. George, you're the one that's bringing it up now. That's
You've done it,
I understand why
sir. You've done it. You've done it 3 times. Every single answer you gave me. Now let me finish, sir.
George,
every single answer you gave, you repeated the slur.
Asked me, George. That's why I'm pushing back on you now. George, you asked me the question 3 times. I responded, but I'm...
And every single time you repeat the slur. That is exactly my point. You simply can't say that it's wrong.
George, so then what you're saying, and I want to get off this topic because it's not the only thing that's going on. But George, now you're saying that AP is the one that slurred Kamala Harris, because those are the facts. You can go to the internet and look at the clips, George, if you want to, or we can talk about this now. I prefer to talk about the future of our country, because the American people are struggling. The American people do need serious policy decisions to be made, and they need serious leadership on the world stage. Kamala Harris has not proven that she can do that. Donald J. Trump has proven that he can do that.
AP did not say that Kamala Harris is not black. She is biracial. She is Indian. She is black. You continue to repeat the fact that you continue to repeat the slur. I don't understand why you and the president do it, but it's clear you're not going to say that it's wrong. And you've now established that for our audience. Trump also said at the convention that he would pardon January 6 rioters.
Everybody look for themselves. Let's move on.
I've already said that. Go ahead.
Internet, everybody. Let's move on. There we go.
So, go on and repeat the slurs again.
Now that's gooder than chicken right there. And God bless Byron Donalds for remaining calm, keeping things professional, and falling for the trap. Let's move on. Let's all get this country back on track. And
he did. He really did. Oh, Chef get robbed, yeah. Yeah, Chef get robbed, yeah.
Rooms loads a
I hope so, you know.
veggies, adaptogens.
Be nice if he did, you know.
Mushroom. San Francisco's once bustling downtown streets still
back
as retailers continue to flee.
Exodus continues.
A lot of retailers have been pulling out of the city.
Well, it's no wonder.
Westfield announced it's giving up its prominent downtown mall location, while AT&T revealed it is closing its flagship store in the city.
The countdown is on in less than a month. These 3 Target stores in the Bay Area will all be shut down. And the reason? It's something we're seeing far too often.
Whole Foods is closing its largest store in San Francisco over safety concerns. Store managers tell us they're temporarily closing the mid-market location to ensure the safety of their team members.
Starbucks will be closing 7 locations in downtown San Francisco, and you see the locations on this map. 6 of them are within a few blocks of Market Street in the financial district or Union Square. One is on Van Ness Avenue at Bush Street.
According to an analysis by the San Francisco Standard, nearly half of the non-service retailers in the city's Union Square district have closed in 2019. Major stores like Crate & Barrel, Anthropologie, and H&M, just a few of the almost 100 shuttered in the last few years, while only 12 stores have opened in that time, according to the Standard.
So surprise, surprise, when you go light on crime and defund the police, then eventually stores close because they can't make any money. Let's talk about it.
So we are back in
what has been known as the most progressive city in America, San Francisco. Now, being as progressive as the city was, they followed suit with some more progressive policies, like defund the police and bail reform. Now, San Francisco went all in on being light on crime, essentially making shoplifting legal in San Francisco. Just so you know, I'm not making this up. Here is liberal CNN calling out San Francisco's shoplifters go free policy.
Comes as some stores are locking up everything from coffee to frozen food to try to combat theft. Our Kyung Law visited one Walgreens that's hit by shoplifters more than a dozen times a day. It happened 3 times while she was inside.
Richie Greenberg walked into a San Francisco Walgreens when he saw in the frozen food section this.
Chains, heavy chains that went from padlock to padlock on both sides of the doors, and this was bizarre, something I've never seen before. This is just more icing on the cake, telling us that rampant crime has become a regular part of life.
So typical that in the 30 minutes we were at this Walgreens, we watched 3 people, including this man, steal.
Did that guy pay? Did that guy pay? He didn't pay.
Walgreens says this Richmond neighborhood store with aisles of products like mustard locked behind plexiglass has the highest theft rate of all their nearly 9,000 U.S. stores, hit more than a dozen times a day. When thieves turned to cleaning out ice cream and frozen burritos, workers grew so frustrated they resorted to the chains.
Now, crime is so bad in San Francisco that Congressman Adam Schiff actually got broken into and stolen.
Southern California Congressman Adam Schiff had his car broken into in San Francisco just before he attended a fundraising dinner for his Senate campaign. Thieves broke into his car on Thursday when it was parked in a downtown parking garage. That's according to the San Francisco Chronicle. The thieves stole his bag, and without a business suit to wear, Schiff still went to that event in Burlingame. He did, though, have to wear just the T-shirt and hiking vest.
So businesses said it's just not worth it to stay in San Francisco if we can't stop people from just coming into the store and taking things without paying for them. So businesses started closing their doors en masse.
Once a crown jewel for retail shopping, tonight the Westfield San Francisco Center is pulling the plug on its famed downtown mall. The stunning decision to walk away comes as the city struggles with homelessness, an open-air drug market, and the perception of crime. In a statement, Westfield says, given the challenging operating conditions in downtown San Francisco, which have led to declines in sales, occupancy, and foot traffic, we have made the difficult decision to transfer management.
I don't come to San Francisco anymore, let's put it that way. It's scary.
As other cities like Chicago and Portland deal with major retail closures, the mall's demise in San Francisco comes just weeks after Nordstrom announced its exit from the city center. With nearly half of the stores set to soon be vacant, the future of those still operating is unclear as the nearby Gap shutters and Old Navy plans to soon close. Westfield says sales in San Francisco have dropped 35% since 2019. while their mall in neighboring San Jose saw sales increase 66%.
So now the people of San Francisco started waking up. For instance, the first thing they did was they elected a very, very progressive DA who was refusing to prosecute any shoplifters. And then they had to go back and recall that guy, kick him out, and get a DA who was at least going to prosecute criminals. Check it out.
We began with local recall election that's getting so much national attention. The effort to unseat San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin. This is Proposition H. Yes on H means recalling the DA. No on H, keep him in office. And tonight, you can see the result is resounding. Boudin is out.
They had hoped that Boudin, the former public defender turned chief prosecutor, would survive this recall election. His 18 months in office were dominated by the pandemic and the outbreak of widespread property crimes, including a rash of mass retail break-ins and assaults on several members of the AAPI community. Many of those victims complained that Boudin declined to pursue hate crime charges in those assaults. Several of his former deputy prosecutors also became some of his loudest critics. They complained about the way District Attorney Boudin, a self-described reformer, would handle prosecutions, often opting for what they described as lenient plea deals.
Now, even though they kicked the DA out, you still had the problem of a progressive government. You had a progressive mayor, a progressive city council. So they still wanted the light on crime policies. So even though you changed the district attorney, things in the city really didn't change. Now, interestingly enough, a lot of the crime was concentrated in minority communities. So these light on crime policies affected those communities even worse. Businesses like supermarkets and any retail shops closed down because police weren't arresting criminals who were essentially robbing those stores blind. That meant residents had to travel miles to go to the nearest supermarket to buy food instead of somewhere in the neighborhood. Now, some retailers and supermarkets tried to buck the trend, like Safeway, for instance. They tried to keep their store open in the minority community. But because crime became so overwhelming and they started losing so much money, they had to close the store in the black community.
Talk about a big change for one of San Francisco's historically black neighborhoods. It's a Safeway that has served the Fillmore district for 4 decades. It has suddenly announced it's closing.
In a statement, Safeway said in part, Safeway recently entered into an agreement to sell 3.68 acres of land at Webster Plaza in the Fillmore district of San Francisco to Align Real Estate, who will pursue a mixed-use development project to include housing and commercial retail space. Safeway says it sees this as an opportunity to be part of the solution to bring much-needed housing to the city. But some customers see it this way.
I think it's more the theft that's going on in the stores. You know, it's rampant over here.
So now the politicians in San Francisco could do one of two things. They could change their thought process on these light on crime policies and start making it illegal for people to shoplift, or they can do something else. They chose to hold the retailers accountable by passing legislation forcing stores to stay open even if they're not making any money.
San Francisco Supervisor Dean Preston has introduced legislation calling on Safeway to reverse their plan to close the grocery store. This Safeway does have a history of theft problems, the store even installing gates inside, but executives made no mention of that as a reason for the planned closure.
It was pretty shocking to community members.
Right away, Supervisor Dean Preston got to work on a resolution demanding the grocery store stay open until the property developer breaks ground.
It is not a good option to just shut down the community's only grocery store so that it can sit vacant for months or years. It just doesn't benefit anyone.
Preston says the closure of Safeway would be devastating. The next closest location is a mile away on Market Street.
This is a major slap in the face to the black community, in the Fillmore, to Japantown right next door, to the many, many seniors, Walgreens.
Now, the wild part about this is that this is the same guy who was warning, defund the police, defund the police. Here it is.
This is a 5-hour-long public comment session of a July 2020 San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting, where several supervisors pledged to defund the police. In late September of 2020, Supervisor Dean Preston got heat from reform activists for voting for a budget that doesn't fire police officers. Yet the next day, he tweeted, "We remain committed to defunding the police."
Now, if you put both of these things together, defund the police and the light on crime policies, essentially making shoplifting legal, then you have this explosion in crime because no one's afraid of any repercussions if you steal something. Now, Safeway has decided to close in. They didn't care about what legislation this guy wanted to pass. Now, San Francisco isn't the only city that has this problem. Chicago, for instance, has the same problem too, and they decided to open up city-owned grocery stores.
Despite that $500 million city deficit, the mayor is exploring the idea of opening a city-owned grocery store to promote food equity.
Many neighborhoods on the south and west sides are without quality grocery stores. Windows are boarded up after private chains moved out. Take this former Aldi, 76 in Ashland, in Auburn Gresham. It closed more than a year ago.
All of our stores are closing. And so now we have to go outside of our neighborhoods.
The major grocery chains claim they left these communities because it just was not profitable.
Now think about the irony in all this. These policies, these light on crime policies, were put in place to allegedly help the black and brown communities. But those policies are secretly destroying those communities. And in some places it's gotten to the point where they're begging for the federal government to send in troops to help them with rampant crime.
A D.C. council member is sounding the alarm tonight over the wide-reaching impact of crime. Ward 8 council member Trayon White today said if rampant shoplifting continues, the Giant on Alabama Avenue in Southeast may be forced to close its doors.
Taken from this store is really taken from yourself.
Councilmember Trayon White says he's met with management and Giant who tell him they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars due to shoplifting in this store alone.
But as DC's leaders struggle to get the crisis under control, one Democratic councilman is now calling for military intervention.
There's a spirit of anarchy and lawlessness rampant throughout communities. I've never seen this onslaught of violence portrayed on our women and our kids. And enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
We are clearly in a war zone. So I have spoken with the DC National Guard. And while I have to have more conversations with the chief of police, which I have today, and the mayor and my colleagues, we have a long way to get there. We just know that police alone is not getting it done. We're simply asking our federal partners for help and presence in our community because we know that officers who have a handgun can't combat 3 people with AR-15s and AK-47s shooting down the street.
Now, this is my take. First, you have to hold people accountable for committing crimes, even shoplifting. And it seems like Democratic lawmakers don't understand the simple principle of cause and effect. By essentially allowing people to shoplift without any consequences, that loses millions of dollars from retailers who can't afford to keep their stores open if they can't make money off of the goods and services they provide to the community. And passing laws to force retailers to stay in San Francisco, even though we know that they have a huge crime problem, even though we know these retailers are losing millions of dollars, isn't the answer, because the only thing that's going to do is force more stores not to come to San Francisco. It's going to make it harder for stores to open up in that area, because if I'm a retailer and I know, hey, if I open up a store in San Francisco, they won't allow me to leave if things get too bad. They're going to pass laws that are going to force me to stay and force me to lose hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, knowing that it's their fault these crimes are happening. Now, as always, tell me where I'm in the comment section. Tell me if you agree with these Democratic policies of defund the police and light on crime policies, not holding shoplifters accountable, because I think it's essentially destroying these communities. But there may be some other reason that I'm overlooking, and you can educate me in the comment section. Now, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.
Order your free $1,000 Trump fight bill. Now, we are giving away these incredible Trump fight bills to any proud American who wants one. The only catch is you just need to cover the small shipping fee, which is under $10.
Yeah, it's on
the night of October 5th.
Crime's a big thing, in California, bros. It really is. It's that's what was the name of that damn thing? But You can't use it right now. It's the Almighty Cuidado. It's Spanish. Let's see here. And as you see, it doesn't even show up. That's because we can't. We don't get it. You know, we don't get it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. But you can't use it. It's a nice ship, though. It's a very nice ship. Let's see what its equipment and stuff is. It's torpedoes. That's nice. Both AP and HP. What's this? Your modified shells. Okay. Now, but anyway, that was it. Let's I'll take that away. Let's go back to and go back to report. Now we're down to 16 on these. It's like these. We're not able to get these till next time, and we can't get into. We about got this one, don't we? What's this one? Earn base, 12,000 base. We're not running no base, so we could do that fairly easy if we just run base. Go up. So we're running 200 base. We could throw one of these on there and do base really quick. Let's anyhow. Low quarters. Huh?
Hi, I'm JT and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First of all,
there's a new epidemic spreading at CNN and MSNBC. Low ratings. After breaking their own record highs for years, the networks now find themselves in a period. For most of the 2000s, cable TV ratings were normal. Channels like ESPN, Disney, TBS, and HGTV ranked the highest, while CNN and MSNBC took lower positions, sometimes not even cracking the top 20. But everything changed when Donald Trump went down the golden escalators in 2015. Viewership for CNN and MSNBC shot straight up. They went from trailing the Hallmark Channel to competing with the top spots. 2016 was CNN's most watched year ever. They experienced an astounding 76% boost in ratings, and then broke their own record again in 2017. MSNBC experienced even more explosive growth with the arrival of Trump on the scene. In 2016, the outlet nearly doubled its viewership.
I don't know why everybody hates him like they do, dudes.
Own viewership records every single year.
I mean, no honesty.
Is a con. Programs like New Day with Chris Cuomo, CNN Tonight with Don Lemon, The Rachel Maddow Show, and Morning Joe all contributed to the explosive growth, and all had one thing in common. They milked the Trump campaign and presidency for every ounce of ratings that they could.
President Trump.
President Trump. President Trump. President Trump.
President Trump.
Trump. Trump. Trump. Trump.
Trump. Trump. Trump. Trump. Trump.
Trump, the Trump campaign. Trump campaign, Trump campaign, the Trump campaign. Trump campaign. It's the Trump campaign. Donald Trump. Trump Russia. Trump campaign, the Trump
Trump
campaign.
Russia.
Trump campaign, Trump campaign.
Trump Russia didn't work out for him, did it?
everything became a story.
At the dessert course, he gets 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream with his chocolate cream pie.
The New York Times giving us some insight, including his daily regimen of watching up to 8 hours of TV and drinking as many as 12 Diet Cokes.
Like the way he drinks water.
The president reached for a
Like
glass
the way he drinks water.
security speech. The president needs to use 2 hands, apparently, to drink from a water bottle.
They talked about what he wore, what he ate, how much he weighed, and, of course, his hair. And then there were the tweets. Every statement, every picture, every typo, and every meme became a story and a point for conflict. The networks also focused enormous amounts of time agonizing over the unsubstantiated Russian collusion story, impeachment, and his pitch for the Supreme Court. Trump became the antagonist that CNN and MSNBC had been waiting for.
Only CNN would ask that question. Fake news. Go ahead.
They even said he was complicit in hurricanes.
A damning Washington Post editorial is calling President Trump, quote, complicit in this storm, not for failing to prepare, but for failing to address climate change.
2020 brought a new
Okay.
as the media blamed Trump for nearly everything the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
How it began, how it spread, and
I know they blame them for all that shit, man. When you come find it out, Fauci was all in
It
it.
changed, however, when Trump was banned from social media in January of 2021 and left office soon after. The media lost their treasure trove of content, and suddenly, they had nothing to talk about. It only took about 50 days for CNN to lose 1.6 million of their primetime viewers. That's a drop of 36% in only a few weeks. Even worse, half of the viewers in the key 25 to 54 age group tuned out, which means prices for advertisements also had to drop significantly. The story over at MSNBC was the same. They experienced a 41% decline between March of 2020 and 2021. Digging into the ratings a bit more shows that the first few months of Biden's tenure have been no less than an embarrassing beatdown for CNN. CNN's best performing primetime anchor, Chris Cuomo, ranked 22nd among cable shows. Don Lemon, another leading CNN anchor, took 37th. Jake Tapper has lost 3/4 of his audience since January, and Brian Stelter hasn't even broken 1 million viewers for 12 weeks straight. Journalist Ted Koppel predicted this exact scenario in 2018.
Oh, the ratings are up. It means you can't live without Donald Trump. You would be lost without Donald Trump.
That is what he says.
Ted, you know that's not true. CNN's ratings would be in the toilet without Donald Trump.
You know that's not true. You're playing for laughs.
Many pundits have attributed the decline in news ratings to Biden acting, quote, more presidential than Trump. But Biden has had plenty of non-presidential moments that certainly would have drawn scrutiny if Trump were in his shoes.
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
And I love kids jumping on my lap. Why, you're getting nervous, man. Look, here's the deal.
Why you get nervous, man?
Heated exchanges with the same CNN reporter. The way the media responded to the outburst, however, is completely different.
Why are you so confident he'll change his behavior, Mr. President?
Yeah, I'm not confident changing behavior. What do you do over there? So when did I say I was confident?
So how does that account to a constructive meeting as President Putin?
You don't understand that. You're wrong.
Wolf, it is quite striking to just see the confidence in his approach, in his tone. He, certainly was comfortable in that moment, taking off his jacket, answering these questions.
Now, here's how the media responded after Trump's exchange with that same CNN reporter.
Why is this a global competition to you if every day Americans are still losing their lives and we're still seeing more cases every day?
Well, they're losing their lives everywhere in the world. And maybe that's a question you should ask China. Don't ask me, ask China that question, okay? When you ask them that question, you may get a very unusual answer. Yes, behind you, please.
But, sir, why aren't you saying that to me specifically?
I'm telling you, I'm not saying it specifically to anybody. I'm saying it to anybody that would ask a nasty question like that.
That's not a nasty
Please
question.
go ahead.
Why is it?
Okay, anybody else? Please, go ahead to the back, please.
I have 2 questions.
No, it's okay.
But you pointed to me. I have 2 questions, Mr. President.
Next, please.
But you called on me.
I did, and you didn't respond, and now I'm calling on
Sorry, I just
the young lady in the back, please.
I just wanted to let my colleague
Okay.
finish, but can I ask you?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, clearly the president was rattled enough to walk off because he didn't want to hear the questions from Caitlin Collins and Weijia Zhang. The president routinely targets reporters who are women and people of color.
In another example, the media praised Biden for eating ice cream.
There's been a lot of change in his political career over the years, but the one constant is that Joe Biden really, really loves ice cream. No matter what is sitting on his plate, just get that man a cone.
Mr. Biden, what flavor did you get?
Mr. President, what did you order?
Chocolate chip.
But when Trump was in a similar spot, they accused him of being unhealthy and greedy.
The president gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone else around the table gets 1.
The White House staff has adapted to Donald Trump's taste, so when everyone else gets water, he gets a Diet Coke. When everybody gets 1 scoop of ice cream, he gets 2.
It's not that Biden is more presidential. That's not why ratings are going down. The media covers the current president in a completely different way compared to the previous one. Why is that? A CNN director revealed the network's different approach to Trump, as he put it. The employee appeared to acknowledge in an undercover video that CNN acted as a propaganda arm of Democrats, and that the media worked to get Trump out of office while also cultivating fear over COVID-19.
Look what we did. We got Trump out. I am 100% going to say it, and I 100% believe it, that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have got voted out.
Our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without saying it, that's what it was, right? I think there's just like a COVID fatigue, so like whenever a new story comes up, they're going to latch onto it.
Do you think it's going to be just like a lot of like fear, like climate?
Yeah, fear sells.
It shouldn't be surprising that trust in the media is declining as a result. Only 29% of all Americans said that they trust journalists to report the facts. CNN and MSNBC made a lot of money as ratings and viewership went through the roof, thanks to manufactured constant Trump outrage. But they may have compromised the long-term value of their brands. Their audiences have become accustomed to anti-Trump coverage all the time, but now the key ingredient is missing: Trump himself. The New York Times reports that CNN and MSNBC have been working furiously in private to find out how to fix their ratings problem. But one solution they've tried isn't working. In a desperate move, the networks have searched for a new Trump. And they don't just want someone like Trump. They want someone that they can call Trump. Brian Stelter seemed to have succeeded in finding a replacement. He selected Tucker Carlson as the new arch nemesis of CNN. He even tried to brand Tucker as, quote, the new Donald Trump.
Tucker Carlson is the new Donald Trump. Every day, Carlson is throwing bombs, offending millions of people, tapping into white male rage and resentment.
The pivot failed to save the journalist from his steep ratings decline, however. His ratings continue to fall, and C-SPAN viewers are even calling in to air their grievances.
I'd like to ask Brian to, on national television, admit he and his network are a bunch of liars.
Mr. Stelter is the biggest minister of misinformation I have ever heard.
My suggestion is whatever CNN says, do the opposite and you'll be fine.
So will the legacy media ever regain the public? That's to be determined. But what's for certain is that CNN and MSNBC have yet to climb out of an ever-deepening hole. If the ratings have taught us anything, it's that the media's only hope is the return of Donald Trump.
If somebody else won, their ratings would go down, they'd all be out of business. Nobody would watch.
Yeah, he's right there.
Called me a liar when I said I just used 1 banana to go from an XL to a medium. But once I teach them the recipe and they see it working for themselves, they realize it's true. But of course, it's not just about eating bananas. You need to prepare a specific banana recipe with 3 other ingredients that you probably already have at home. Recently, scientists have proven that bananas are the only fruit that contains a substance called epigallocatechin. This substance is responsible for regulating the amount of bad bacteria in your gut and replenishing the good ones. My husband, who is a researcher, shared this recipe with me because I was always complaining about my body, and the result was amazing. I completely transformed myself. My friends were definitely
Alright, bros, that's, I'm going to take a break. I'm not feeling that well. And I don't, in all honesty, I just don't see us getting what we're looking for here. So not this time. We might get it or next time on the Battle Pass. We'll have another Thursday coming, which I have, well, we might get it right here. I have chemo Wednesday. I have chemo this Wednesday, and so We got how many days? We got a day. We'll be available for 1 day. So we got till tomorrow to finish this one. Like I said, I'm not feeling all that great. I'll probably be back on there in a bit, and we'll do some Fallout New Vegas.